Some figures in history, they cast such long, dramatic shadows, don't they? And sometimes others who are just as significant kind of get lost in that shade.
That's so true.
Today, we're pulling one of those towering figures right into the spotlight, Benito Mussolini. Now, you'll know the name, of course, but his full story, I mean, from his really surprising origins to his, well, brutal end, it's crucial for understanding 20th century Europe.
Absolutely. And it's a story that, frankly, often gets overshadowed by, the bigger picture of World War II.
Exactly.
So our mission here in this deep dive is to really unpack the complex layers of Mussolini's life. We'll look at his unexpected start, trace his calculated rise as Il Duce, and, really get into the devastating impact of his fascist rule.
Yeah. The goal is to give you a comprehensive, nuanced picture of this man who just profoundly shaped Italy and, let's face it, played a huge, often grim role on the world stage.
And to do that, we've drawn from quite a range of sources. We've got biographical accounts, historical analyses of his policies, even contemporary views on his legacy.
Which is great because it gives us that multifaceted view, lets us really dig into what's important, what actually sticks.
Okay, so let's get into it. We start not with the dictator, but with a boy. Benito Amilcare Andrea Mussolini, born July 29th, 1883, in Predappio, a small village in Italy.
And his upbringing sounds like, well, like something out of a novel almost, full of contradictions.
He really was. I mean, you have to picture this household. His father, Alessandro, he's a blacksmith, a committed atheist, a really fervent socialist, involved in local politics.
Right. Strong beliefs there.
Definitely. But then his mother, Rosa, she's a devout Roman Catholic school teacher. So, young Benito. He's basically raised with Karl Marx on one side and the Pope on the other.
Wow, so he'd go to mass with his mom?
Yeah, and then his dad might drag him off to the pub to listen to his socialist buddies debating revolution. It's quite the mix for a kid.
That's incredible. How did that pull in opposite directions, how did it shape him as a child? Did you see hints of the future leader?
Well, what's interesting is that accounts describe him as quite shy, actually,
Yeah.
but also aggressive, rebellious, pretty unruly.
He even said himself, didn't he? I was not a good boy.
He did. That tension between shyness and aggression seems to have been there right from the start.
And the unruliness wasn't just talk. I mean, the school incidents.
Oh, absolutely. His mother sent him off to boarding school, hoping for some discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't quite work out.
He injured a classmate with a penknife at 9?
Yep. Got expelled, then moved to another school.
And got expelled again for threatening someone else with a knife. It's hard not to see a pattern there, even so young.
It really is. But despite all that chaos, somehow, he qualified as an elementary school master in 1901.
Which is another one of those surprising turns, isn't it?
Exactly. And that capacity for unexpected shifts became, a real hallmark. Because from being a teacher, he pivoted again this time into radical journalism and socialist politics, big time.
He joined the National Directorate of the Italian Socialist Party, the PSI, in 1912.
He did. And he was apparently very good at the journalism side.
Exceptionally good, it seems. Editor of the party paper, Avanti. Circulation just exploded under him, didn't it? 20,000 to 100,000.
Yeah, massive jump. People like John Gunther later called him one of the best journalists alive. He even wrote for Hearst until 35. Huge reach.
And his ideology back then, firmly socialist.
Oh, deeply rooted in Marxism. He called himself an authoritarian communist, saw Marx as the greatest theorist of socialism. He knew his stuff too, even the more obscure Marxist writings.
Which makes his later transformations all the more jarring.
Completely.
Yeah.
Especially when you consider how strongly he seemed to hold those early beliefs, or at least how strongly he stated them.
It hints at that pragmatism, maybe even opportunism, using ideology as a tool, power being the real goal.
That's a very sharp way to put it.
And get this, in 1911, he's actually in a riot against Italy's war in Libya, calls it an imperialist war, even does 5 months in jail for it.
It's incredible, isn't it? The anti-war socialist firebrand, before he became, well, Il Duce.
So World War I arrives, and this is the moment everything changes for him, ideologically speaking.
The pivotal shift, absolutely. He gets kicked out of the Socialist Party precisely because he starts arguing for military intervention in the war. A total 180 from his anti-imperialist stance just a few years earlier.
So he basically burns his bridges with the socialists, starts his own paper, Il Popolo d'Italia, pushing for war.
That's right. And then he actually serves in the army.
Right, he enlists, gets promoted to corporal for merit in war, even gets praised for, exemplary conduct, mental calmness.
Yeah, after about 9 months on the front lines. Pretty intense trench warfare.
Until he gets wounded.
Yeah, February 1917. An accidental mortar explosion during training left him with apparently over 40 pieces of metal in his body. So his military service ends there.
And it's after leaving the party, after being discharged, that's when he pivots fully to Italian nationalism.
Exactly. This is where the fascist movement really starts to take shape.
A movement directly opposed to his old beliefs. No more egalitarianism, no class conflict. Instead, it's this revolutionary nationalism cutting across class lines.
A complete departure. Shedding his old skin, as you said earlier.
And Italy itself was. Well, it was a mess after the war, wasn't it? Perfect
Yeah.
conditions for someone promising radical change.
Oh, absolutely ripe for it. Italy felt cheated after the Paris peace talks, didn't get the territory they were promised. You had massive public anger, political chaos, inflation through the roof, unemployment.
A nation just desperate for someone, anyone, to take charge.
And into that void step, Mussolini and his black shirts.
The guys in the black shirts, yeah. Known for being intimidating, beating up socialists and communists in the streets.
And often, the police kind of looked the other way. There was a lot of sympathy for the fascists among the establishment who also feared the socialists.
So Mussolini projects this image. He's the strongman, the only one who can restore order.
And it worked. May 1921 elections, the fascists, running as part of a larger bloc, win 35 seats. Mussolini himself gets elected to the Chamber of Deputies.
He's inside the system now.
But he wasn't stopping there. He needed a broader base. So another shift.
The chameleon strikes again?
Sort of, yeah. He becomes publicly pro-monarchy, pro-church, even though he still despised socialism. Renames the party the National Fascist Party.
Pragmatism personified. Which brings us to the March on Rome, October 1922.
The big moment. Mussolini basically says, "Give me power or we take it." And around 30,000 black shirts gather in Rome to back him up.
A show of force. And the king, Victor Emmanuel III.
He blinked. The government wanted martial law declared, but the king refused. He was afraid of a civil war.
So instead, he just appoints Mussolini prime minister.
He does. Mussolini, interestingly, stayed in Milan while all this was happening, managing things from afar.
And the king, the conservatives, they thought they could use Mussolini to restore order, right? Control him.
That seems to be the calculation. A monumental miscalculation, as it turned out.
Yeah.
They completely failed to see the totalitarian danger he posed.
And that danger wasn't slow in coming. How quickly did he consolidate power?
Astonishingly fast. Within 5 years, Italy's basically a one-party dictatorship. He used both legal and definitely illegal means to dismantle democracy piece by piece.
It sounds like a complete takeover, not just politically, but psychologically, too. What were the key messages he drilled into people?
3 words, really. Believe, obey, fight. That was the mantra.
Simple, powerful.
And it resonated. You have to remember how chaotic things had been. A lot of people, even some former socialists, were just tired of the instability. They saw his firm hand as the only way forward. Order, but at the cost of freedom.
And how did he enforce it? Was it all jackboots or more subtle?
It was both. Criticism of the state, banned. Opposition parties, disbanded. Spies everywhere reporting anyone who stepped out of line. It created this chilling atmosphere of control.
And the press?
Controlled. He maintained an illusion of a free press, but newspaper editors were handpicked by him. They needed a fascist party certificate to even work.
Wow.
Teachers.
Unions.
Teachers, professors had to swear an oath to the regime. Trade unions were absorbed into this thing called the corporative system, which was basically under government control. It was total. Public life, private life, everything reshaped.
A chilling picture. Which leads us neatly into the core of his ideology. The fascist state itself. He laid it out in the Doctrine of Fascism in 32. What was the central idea?
He presented fascism as more than just politics. It was, he said, a system of thought, almost a religious conception of life where man connects to a higher law.
So not just governing, but transforming people, remaking society.
Exactly. It was fundamentally anti-individualistic. The state was everything. The individual only mattered if their interests lined up with the state's.
The state as this almost mystical entity.
Crucially, he argued, the state creates the nation, not the other way around. It gives the people moral unity, a real life. It wasn't just about keeping order. It was a spiritual force, an educator shaping character and faith through discipline, through authority.
And the symbol, the lictor's rods.
The fasces, yeah. Those bundles of rods with an axe blade symbolizing unity, strength, justice, all embodied in the state.
And it pretty much rejected every other ideology out there.
Oh, completely. Marxism. Rejected, denied class struggle was the key driver of history. Democracy. rejected argued numbers don't guarantee good decisions, called it a kingless regime infested by many kings.
Ouch. Liberalism.
Dismissed.
Yeah.
Fleeting relevance, he thought. Fascism at its core embraced pragmatism, a will to power, a will to live, and significantly an attitude toward violence. It was built on force.
Okay, let's switch gears to the economy. How did he try to translate these ideas into actual policy? I know he launched some big campaigns.
He did lots of public works to tackle unemployment and, the economic problems. The most famous early one was the battle for wheat.
Right, trying to make Italy self-sufficient in grain. New farms, draining marshes.
Exactly. Established 5,000 new farms, drained the huge Pontine marshes south of Rome, created new towns like Littoria and Sabaudia. Looks impressive.
Looked impressive, but was it actually good economics?
Well, that's the question. It definitely provided work and it was great propaganda, but it diverted resources from other, maybe more suitable crops. It pushed up prices for consumers, probably reduced consumption overall. Plus, it led to high tariffs and more government debt.
So unintended consequences. What about the battle for land? Reclamation projects.
Similar story. Mixed success, inconsistent with the wheat focus, and largely abandoned by 1940. It shows that paradox, doesn't it?
Oh.
Authoritarian states promise self-sufficiency, but often end up making the economy less efficient, more fragile, because they ignore basic economic realities or resource limitations.
A powerful lesson indeed. And then bang, 1929, Wall Street crashes, the Great Depression hits globally. How did Mussolini's Italy handle that?
It hit Italy hard, like everywhere else. Chaos. Mussolini launched initiatives like Gold for the Fatherland.
Where people donated their wedding rings in gold.
Yeah, exactly. Public donations of gold, melted down for the national banks in exchange for steel wristbands. Symbolic, real.
But underneath the symbolism, what was Italy's actual industrial strength like? Could it really go alone?
Fundamentally, no. Italy's industry was limited. Lots of artisans, not enough mass production. That really hurt them later with military tech. The state kept having to bail out failing industries, creating this kind of mixed public-private model.
And the self-sufficiency drive, the autarky, did that help during the Depression?
It helped a bit initially with grain imports, reducing reliance there, but it jacked up prices for other essentials, and the whole economy became super vulnerable to wheat price swings. Plus, Italy just didn't have the natural resources like fertilizers for the wheat campaign. Complete autarky was never really feasible.
Okay, let's talk about one of the most surprising U-turns, his relationship with the Catholic Church. Given his early, very vocal atheism, I mean, calling Christianity a disease of the psyche, how did he pivot so dramatically?
It's a masterclass in political calculation, really. He absolutely despised the church early on, but he wasn't stupid. He knew how powerful Catholicism was in Italy. He needed the church, or at least needed not to have it actively against it.
So practical politics trumped personal belief.
Completely. He started making gestures, had his kids take communion in 24. Then in 25, he had a religious marriage ceremony with his wife Rachel. They'd only had a civil one years before.
Setting the stage for the big one, the Lateran Treaty in 1929. What did that actually do?
It was massive. It granted Vatican City independence, recognized it as a sovereign state under the Pope. Catholicism became the official state religion of Italy.
So religious instruction in schools, church control over marriage.
All of that, plus state salaries for clergy, tax exemptions. The church regained enormous influence. Pope Pius VIII was thrilled, called Mussolini the man of providence.
It sounds like a complete win for the church. But knowing Mussolini, did he really just hand over that much power?
You're right to be skeptical. Almost as soon as the ink was dry, Mussolini started reasserting the state's supremacy. He made speeches claiming the church was subordinate. Privately, he was apparently still scathing, calling the papacy a malignant tumor, confiscating Catholic newspapers when they annoyed him.
So, public reconciliation, private hostility, consistent with his pragmatism, I suppose.
Very consistent. Always about power. Which brings us neatly to his imperial ambitions. The drive for a spazio vitale living space.
He had this vision of Italy dominating the Mediterranean, maybe even reaching the Indian Ocean.
That was the secret dream, yeah. He saw imperialism as vital, dynamic. Not expanding was a sign of decadence, of decay.
So expansion was always on the agenda, even early on.
Oh, yeah. The Corfu incident in 23, over some assassinated Italian officers in Greece. He bombed Corfu, occupied it, and was apparently ready for war with Britain over it. Only his own navy talked him down.
Wow. But he also played the diplomat sometimes. Locarno, the Soviet pact.
He did. He was part of the Locarno treaties in 25, guaranteeing Germany's western borders. Signed an Italo-Soviet pact in 33, partly to send a message to Germany, actually.
It's strange to think he initially opposed Hitler, isn't it?
It is. He saw Hitler as a rival, maybe even a threat early on. Remember, Austria was kind of in Italy's sphere of influence then. When Austrian Chancellor Dollfuss was assassinated by Nazis in 1934, Mussolini moved troops to the border, threatened war with Germany.
And he was part of the Stresse Front against Germany in 1935.
Exactly, trying to contain German ambitions. But his own actions, particularly his colonial ventures, started to isolate him.
And those colonial ventures were brutal. Let's be clear about that.
Unbelievably brutal. In the lands Italy took from Austria, Hungary, Slovene, and Croat societies, libraries, schools were shut down, teachers exiled. In Libya, taking land for Italian settlers sparked resistance. The pacification of Libya became, well, genocidal.
Concentration camps, chemical weapons.
Yes. By 1931, over half the population of Cyrenaica was in concentration camps. The Air Force used chemical weapons. Marshal Badoglio wrote chillingly that the entire population of Cyrenaica must perish.
That's horrifying. And this wasn't just Libya.
No. He brought in racist laws, obsessed about preventing miscegenation, mixing races, didn't want Italians becoming half-castes like he claimed the French were in Tunisia, and then Ethiopia.
The invasion of Ethiopia in 1935, another brutal chapter.
Estimated 8% of the population died. Orders given to wipe out the female populations of towns. Haile Selassie fled, appealed to the League of Nations. It caused international outrage but didn't stop Mussolini.
And that outrage, the resistance in Ethiopia, that's what pushed him towards Hitler.
That seems to be the turning point. Ethiopia's resistance infuriated him, isolated Italy internationally, and, as one historian put it, sent him into the arms of Adolf Hitler.
Even though some of his own people objected, I remember reading Italo Balbo, a famous fascist aviator, accused him of licking Hitler's boots.
Yes, there was internal opposition. But Mussolini had total control over foreign policy by then. The pro-German path was set.
And he just kept going down that path, invaded Albania in April 1939.
Then, May 1939, the Pact of Steel, a full-blown military alliance with Nazi Germany. Apparently, Hitler promised him no major war for 3 years, which Mussolini might have actually believed.
A fatal belief. And he was stirring up trouble with France, too, demanding territory.
Yes. Orchestrated demonstrations demanding Djibouti, Tunisia, Corsica. Tensions were incredibly high. War was brewing.
So Italy enters World War II. How did the Italian military actually perform? There are a lot of stereotypes, but what's the reality?
It's complex. The Navy and Air Force, especially early on, did okay, sometimes quite well. But the Army suffered badly.
Why was that? Was it just bad luck or deeper issues?
Deeper issues. That lack of industrial capacity we talked about meant outdated tech. Poor leadership was a huge problem. Equipment was often inadequate. And crucially, motivation among the conscripts was often very low.
I remember that nickname the troops sent to Spain got. Cuando te vas? When are you leaving? Even from their allies.
Exactly. It says a lot. And the decision to send troops to help invade the Soviet Union, that was disastrous.
Huge losses. Turned public opinion.
Massive losses. Maybe 1 in 3 sent to Russia died. It really soured public opinion back home and made Italy completely dependent on German help. You heard stories of farmers saying, "Don't kill me, I don't care who wins." Towns just celebrating whoever occupied them to avoid being looted.
A total collapse of morale. And we should mention the war crimes issue here, too. The myth of the Italiani Bravalente, the nice Italians.
Yes, that myth persists, making it hard to confront the reality. There were documented war crimes. Use of chemical weapons in Ethiopia, like at Amba Aradam. Exploitation by colonial officials. There's a grim story of a reporter literally buying a 14-year-old girl as a wife. It's a difficult history.
And Mussolini himself. As the war turned against the Axis, how did his mindset change? I read he was initially happy about Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, apparently he saw it as clarifying things, predicted a long war where America would eventually show its strength. Seems he was still thinking in grand strategic terms, even as things were falling apart around him.
But reality started to bite. April 1943, the Allies advancing in North Africa.
He got desperate, urged Hitler to make a separate peace with Stalin so Germany could send more troops to save Italy.
Which Hitler obviously wasn't going to do. Then the Allies land in Sicily July 10th, 1943. That must have been the breaking point.
Absolutely. It showed the Italian army was just collapsing.
Yeah.
Then, 9 days later, July 19th, Mussolini meets Hitler, but gets news that Rome has been bombed for the very first time.
Yeah.
His mood just plummets.
He's trapped, can't win the war, can't get out of the alliance.
Exactly. And then the final act begins within his own regime. Key figures, even his own son-in-law, Galeazzo Ciano, turn on him.
The Grand Council of Fascism meets July 24th, 43. First time since the war started.
That's right. And they vote 19-8 for a motion basically asking the king to take back his full constitutional powers, a vote of no confidence.
Now, legally, that vote didn't force him out, did it? The PM answered only to the king.
Technically, no de jure effect, but politically, it was devastating. The king saw which way the wind was blowing. The next day, he dismissed Mussolini, just like that.
So, Il Duce is out. But that wasn't quite the end of his story.
Not quite. He was arrested, but then famously rescued by German commandos in a daring raid led by Otto Skorzeny.
And Hitler puts him back in charge? Sort of.
Sort of. He's installed as the head of a puppet state in German-occupied northern Italy, the Italian Social Republic, usually called the Republic of Salo. From September 43 to April 45, he had very little real power, completely dependent on the Germans.
A puppet leader. But he still had enough power for revenge. He had Ciano, his son-in-law, executed, right?
He did, along with others who voted against him in the Grand Council, a bitter final act. He also spent a lot of time during this period writing his memoirs, My Rise and Fall.
Trying to shape his legacy, even then, what was his state of mind like right near the end?
Utterly defeated. There's an interview from January 45 where he just says, I am finished. My star has fallen. I have no fight left. I am little more than a corpse. Really stark.
And the actual end came quickly and violently. April 45.
Yes. Allied troops were advancing through northern Italy. April 25th, he tries to flee to Switzerland with his mistress, Claire Petacci. They disguise themselves in German uniforms.
But it doesn't work. He was too famous.
Exactly. All those years building his personality cult meant his face was instantly recognizable, even in disguise.
So they're caught by partisans?
Yep. Stopped near Lake Como on April 27th by communist partisans. 2 days later, April 28th, 1945, Mussolini and Petacci are taken to a small village, Giuliano di Mezzagre, and summarily executed, shot.
And the story doesn't even end there. The bodies.
The bodies were taken to Milan the next day, April 29th, dumped in Piazzale Loreto.
A significant spot, wasn't it, where fascists had executed partisans before?
Precisely. It was renamed Piazza Quindici Martiri 15 Martyr Square in their honor. And the crowd, well, they took out their rage on the bodies, kicked, spat upon.
And then they were hung upside down from a gas station girder.
Yes. Mussolini, Petacci, and other executed fascists. Hung upside down, stoned by civilians, a truly gruesome public display of hatred and revenge, and maybe a warning to any remaining fascists. Achille Steris, another fascist leader caught nearby, was shot and strung up alongside them.
A brutal end to a brutal regime. His body was eventually buried in an unmarked grave, I believe.
Thrown into one, yes. Just an ignominious end.
So after Mussolini, Italy becomes a republic. But the physical traces of his regime are still there, aren't they? The buildings, the monuments?
Oh, absolutely indelible marks on Italy's cities. Urban projects, buildings, plaques, street names. They're everywhere.
And how does that sit with Italy's memory of fascism today?
It's complicated. Those very visible, solid traces, they kind of contrast with the hazy memories of fascism that often exist. Things hidden in plain sight, as some historians say.
Like the Square Colosseum building in Rome, or that huge obelisk with ducks carved on it.
Exactly. Since the 90s especially, these things spark debate. Is looking at them re-examining history? Or is it revisionism? Where's the line? It's a constant negotiation.
And it's not just ancient history. You mentioned a poll.
Yeah, even as recently as February 2018, a poll found nearly 19% of Italians had a positive or very positive view of Mussolini.
19%. That's significant.
It is. It reflects really complex feelings, especially perhaps in the South, where some people might remember the public works or his campaign against the mafia and view it differently. And his granddaughter, Alessandra Mussolini, even went into politics. The legacy is far from settled.
Wow. What a journey. From that rebellious kid with socialist parents through the radical journalist phase, the invention of fascism, the iron grip on Italy, the disastrous wars, to that horrific end in Piazzale Loreto.
It's an extraordinary and often deeply disturbing story.
So as you reflect on all this, what really stands out? His transformations, his ideas, the way his rule still echoes in Italy. What resonates most with you about power, about society?
For me, maybe it's that core idea he articulated. Fascism is pragmatic, driven by a will to power, will to live, embracing violence. Thinking about that. Well, consider this. In our own era, where information is so easily weaponized, where narratives can be spun so effectively, how might those lessons from Mussolini about shaping belief, about asserting state authority, how might they still be echoing today, even in democracies, perhaps in ways we don't always recognize?